And it is a beautiful, cool afternoon here in Tel Aviv, and feels more like fall than it feels like the beginning of summer, but that's what it is. And my name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today, and I have the privilege to host Anita Modi, who is the founder and CEO of Peer AI. We're going to hear in a second about what Peer AI is doing. They just had a big press release like less than 2 weeks ago. And they're, I think like maybe 2 weeks ago they were a document drafting tool, and now they're doing queries and prediction and more and a lot more good things, which we're going to hear about in a few minutes. And so, Anita, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Danny, thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. It's such a privilege to be here today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on, and I love having founders like you on the show because we're really at the cutting edge of what's happening right now in tech bio, and we seem to be like one of the almost the only channels that are giving a really good platform for founders like you. The focus, of course, is not only tech; it's actually more business than on tech. Someone asked me about molecules, so we do have some molecule companies on the show. I'm much more interested in the person and the founder and in the business than I am in the molecule. And I think that and this is I think what really interests our readers, our listeners, which is that intersection between tech and AI and people and the business. And let's start with your own personal journey to pure AI. This is not your first rodeo, I think, is it?
Not my first rodeo. I have spent nearly 2 decades now, specifically building technology for our industry. Have had the privilege of working across the provider side in genomics, as well as clinical research and drug development. And I'll tell you, Danny, early on, I thought I was going to go into research myself. I was on the PhD track, but realized sort of, late night working in the lab and then starting to explore what happens after the lab, really started getting fascinated with the problem space around the path from the lab to patients. So clinical trials, policy, technology, and general just innovation and models around driving patient access. So very quickly sort of turned my career to all aspects of that and really saying, how do we innovate in our industry to drive patient access? Before I started Peer about 3 years ago, which I know we'll dive more into, I served as the Chief Quality and Business Transformation Officer at a company called Science 37. So, for those who
Well
are not
done.
familiar with Science 37, yeah, the company pioneered the concept of virtual or decentralized clinical trials. And when I think about innovation in our industry, to me, like that is one of the beacons of trying to just change how trials operate. So, this idea of can you bring trials to the patients? Can you turn the model on its head to really, again, drive patient access? But in my role, especially running, quality, working closely with regulatory teams and being kind of on the ground for how transformation really happens, just saw firsthand how drug development actually works. So fragmented systems, manual data entry, quality issues from very experienced, experts clicking through tools and emailing files around, as well as, the massive sort of documentation burden that exists around drug development. Um, so my experience, honestly, working firsthand with regulatory teams across large pharma as their transformation and strategy partner was kind of the driving factor of starting Peer. Um, and I'll share with you, there was a specific moment that really crystallized it for me. So Science 37, again, operated in terms of running these clinical trials and was subject to a poorly written protocol. A result of a quick copy paste and error around the eligibility criteria that actually ended up costing us millions of dollars at a clinical site. And for me, that experience just made the stakes real, right? You see that it's not, the process of developing protocols, the documentation, reviews, it's not just administrative, it's really the backbone for how trials are run and ultimately approval as well. Um, and so for, maybe listeners who aren't too familiar with this space, when you look at the drug development process, documentation is the backbone of how that's done. So every required drug requires almost 1,500 unique documents that can span, 200,000 pages. And the process has largely been the same for the last few decades. And so my co-founders and I saw what, AI and really agentic AI could do just had the, feeling from our own experiences as operators in this space that it would fundamentally change how subject matter experts do this work. Um, and that's why we founded Peer. We're about 2.5 years in, generating hundreds of regulatory documents, over 10,000 pages, and it's been really exciting to, I think, witness the power and potential of AI in driving real value in this space.
It is,
I
and
was
it's
gonna say,
actually
I was gonna say, Danny, I think given your background building flash data, like you have been through these, FDA approvals. You've seen this from the sponsor side,
yeah,
and
yeah.
experienced this.
We have, yes. I felt the pain, and I wasn't sponsored. We were run, but we were working directly with sponsors who
Exactly.
using our system for clinical data management, and there is a lot of pain there, and you guys are definitely hit a point which is, in a sense, it's a big pain point, but it's also, like you said, a lot of Word documents, and I often like to say the biggest risk in clinical and drug development is Microsoft Office. And if you think about it, so you started with medical writing. Those were your primary customers, I guess.
That's
And
right.
now you're moving up the chain, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So one of the announcement that we made kind of a couple weeks ago now really came out of our experience with our kind of early customers over the last few years. So we started in documentation, driving, how are documents written faster with higher quality? Where can AI support or be a peer to kind of the expert teams putting this together? And very quickly, I think learned a couple things. One, the opportunity for just more orchestration. A lot of times our customers were stuck trying to figure out where is the data? Is it stuck? Whose court is this in? How do reviews happen? So kind of the workflow around the documentation itself, which unfortunately today lives in Excel spreadsheets or is updated in meetings or a lot of email back and forth. So really centralizing the larger bottlenecks that often occur around, broader submission processes. And then I think, our continued vision around driving, high quality submissions, how much can we use AI to bring in more predictive intelligence, rather than uh, replying to queries, actually trying to say, can we identify those queries in advance um, based on sort of the experiences that the company has already had. So it's been really exciting, I think, to see how AI can again be a peer in thinking about, driving more intelligence and supporting kind of the very complex strategy around submissions.
And that sort of segues directly into my second question, which is how do you actually create value for customers? Now, obviously, you're a serious Excedrin headache remover, that's for sure. But really, sort of break it down for us, for me and and our listeners here. Exactly what's your value creation play here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before we talk about creating value, let's talk about what value means in this space, right? The goal is, again, reducing cycle time. Ultimately, how do you get molecules to market as quickly as possible in the highest, quality way that's ultimately demanded by our industry? So one aspect of that is speed, speed of working through a decades-long drug development process and helping accelerate that path to market. I think the bigger aspect that we talk about a lot is quality. If you actually look at the data, almost a third of data in FDA submissions actually end up having quality issues. 75% of submissions in general face delays, and on average, the median delay is 435 days. And often these are due to inconsistencies in data or missing data. So it's really impactful when you think about again the path to kind of patient access and getting life-changing therapies to those who need it. And so we often measure not just the time that we're saving, but really how are we improving quality of the submissions and where can you use AI to again be that strategic partner to experts. So the way we actually do that and sort of create value is, we combine a specialized AI agent team. So think of it as a bunch of autonomous kind of functioning capabilities that work hand in hand with the human experts. We call them these human control points, but ways for experts to validate, verify, sort of course correct around how AI is being applied to ultimately, automate these really complex regulatory documents from protocols to clinical study reports, INDs. So you're dramatically improving both the speed at the end of the day and quality. We have a 6 agent orchestration for every single document. We have document specific agents that do everything from ingesting data to mapping data and template creation, different types of authoring different types of content, performing QC. So it's really pretty complex orchestration that maps so much of how this work is done today, but really, again, surfacing it in a way that experts can essentially inject themselves at these strategic, checkpoints along the way. And I think that's really unique. I think that's a really, for one, necessary way to approach this space, keeping AI on a short leash when you're talking about really high stakes regulatory work. Um, and I'll say the results largely speak for themselves when you look at the work that we've done on the medical writing side. We've seen teams experience everything from 50% time savings for more complex documents like phase 3 CSRs or modules of the IND, but all the way to even 80 or 90% when you're working on documents like batches of safety narratives or even protocols as well, while either maintaining or even often improving document quality as well.
Now,
And I think, oh yeah, I was going to say what I think we're
yeah, so
excited about. Yeah, yeah,
I looked at, I read your press release and
yeah,
I looked at that quote on the 435-day delay and the JAMA
yeah,
article, but it's a 2014 paper, so it's an old statistic and it refers to resubmissions. So in other words, if you didn't get it right the first time, back in 2014 when this survey was done, the survey said that the average delay was on resubmitting. In other words, a cycle from FDA finding the problem to fixing the problem to
exactly.
FDA approving your fix was 435 days, which what a
Year and
year,
a half.
3 or 4 months, right? So I guess the question in my mind right now is really I have like two questions in my mind. Seeing that first of
Yeah,
all, that was like 2014. Maybe things have just gotten better in general by now.
yeah.
On their own, no? Maybe things sometimes life is good to us and things get better just by doing nothing, no?
I would love to agree with you, and that would be my hope. I will find you an article that's actually an updated. I think the 435 is actually a newer report. I'll find it for you. But largely, things have not changed, right? And I think we see this firsthand from our customers around the increased number of people that are working on these documents, the increased number of reviews that have happened around documentation to get out the door. On average, I think each document goes through 5 through 7 cycles of review. Even today, we've seen it with our customers. And so I wish we were at a point that we could say it's naturally gotten better without any intervention. But what we're seeing in the ground is this is still a pain point for customers. And I think it's important to think about AI to truly transform in this space is not just the technology. It's really thinking about how process, people, and technology go hand in hand. And I think AI and sort of the advent of AI has almost given us the opportunity to rethink how so much of this work is done and rethink some of the roles and where experts can add value. And again, almost jump from reactive, which is where I put that sort of, resubmission statistic to where can you continue to get more and more proactive?
So basically, what you're saying is that and then we'll hit the new version in a second, but by using AI to actually automate a lot of the medical writing or to augment human medical writers, I think, then what you're saying is that you can enable humans to do a better and more precise job, and then reduce the number of requests for corrections from the FDA. Did I get that right?
Yeah, again, we named the company Peer because that's our view. How do we continue to be a supporter of experts in this space? I think a lot of the conversation is often about, hey, how do you just get an initial draft? Some of the work that we've launched is around using AI to QC this work, checking consistency between massive documents, allowing data updates to be propagated everywhere and accurately throughout. That's actually where you see so many cycles of review, repeat, and then quality items, ultimately come up. So it's important to think about this not linearly, but almost iteratively, and say, how do you continue to connect data, documents, and decision making in this process? And where can AI continue to support that that aspect. I think to your point of the roles, I do, and we talk about this a lot because we have a whole medical writing team internally ourselves who's been building our platform. How the role of medical writers, and I'll say really experts, is really shifting to reviewing. How do you take sort of repetitive tasks off their plate and give more space for strategic review, strategic thinking, checking the things that matter, going back to, previous experiences. And I think that's really the critical unlock.
Is
Letting
this
review.
like code? In other words, what's happening with code right now in the past? I would say not right now, but it's been happening for like a bit over a year now. What's happening with code is that people that were originally amazingly good coders, their skills have atrophied because they don't write code anymore. They write specs. So, and I think anyone who is a professional programmer probably knows the feeling that you can sit down and churn out a whole system in a few hours of work and you don't actually write any code, but you're spending your time writing specs. Now, is this the way the system works? In other words, the medical writers don't actually write code anymore, write anymore. They write specs for what they want to see for the end result. Is that how it works?
I guess that's one way you could think about it. Ultimately, medical writers are exercising their judgment of what is the best way to tell the story around the data from, the various clinical trials. And that requires being really clear on key messages, on the mapping of the, data of the document, and ultimately, what are the points that you emphasize and how do you do it? Is it table? Is it text? Is it images? Like there's so much judgment that even comes into kind of storytelling. And I do liken it to code, but I'll say where it's really important again, and we see this with our engineering team, is are you able to check the work, make sure that it's sound, and have again a human in the loop at the right points to guide AI and keep it on a short leash to ultimately get to a place of higher speed, but also higher quality. And then learning from that. That's probably the other piece of our platform is every change, every signal, every document, we continue to get better because we start to capture those preferences and then can, ultimately apply it back.
Well, it sounds good, and the the new version that you have, you're talking about predicting queries. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I think our industry has been in a model of, you get queries, you try to reduce the time to respond to them. There was efforts around using AI there from last few years. I think our view was, hey, can you turn that model on its head, take the data that is not just publicly available, but sitting within organizations based on previous submissions and start to flag those queries in advance based on the committee, based on the therapeutic area.
Oh,
Um,
so for our listeners should understand, we're talking about we're not talking about EDC queries. We're talking about the FDA reviewer
yes,
queries, right? Okay, okay, just
that's
to,
exactly right. Thank
right.
you
So
for
when you talk to
clarifying
a
that.
clinical ops person and say queries, they're thinking about queries on the data. But no, here we're talking about queries from the agency going back to the sponsor on the submission on the documents, right?
That's exactly right. And again, it's not claiming we don't know everything that's going to come up, but can we flag certain things for consideration, right? Even if it is similar to how we do QC, even if the other filing says, this is not relevant, or we know this and we're intentional about this. It's almost preparing organizations for how to have these conversations with regulatory bodies as well.
And how's that working?
Yeah, I mean, we're early stages, but I think it's been really promising. And I think what I'm the most excited about is how our customers have just been so receptive about bringing in intelligence in sort of deeper and deeper ways, right? I think we've moved from can AI be helpful in sort of pilot land to where else can I bring AI? Again, as a peer, as augmenting kind of how this work is done. But it's been really exciting to see that, I would say, ultimately reception from pharma and biotech customers.
I think something we'd all like to hear is were you able to anticipate a query that an actual human FDA reviewer said? And even though I think now the FDA has already announced that they're using
AI themselves
AI
also.
and themselves in document review, so maybe we're going to reach a stage where you have an FDA agent talking to a peer agent, right? That's probably the next stage in evolution.
It definitely could be. I think our strong view is you're going to always have a human involved, to determine and make those judgment calls around what the narrative is, and how to think about, these data sets. But yes, I expect there will be more AI to AI conversation, which
Um,
is a little mind-blowing to think about
Maybe,
sometimes.
maybe by, maybe by 2041, that's how it's going to work, right? So
Yeah.
you'll have peer agents talking to FDA reviewer agents. Um, so, I think the speed and the quality is a pretty clear win. Being able to predict queries and maybe use that feedback loop to improve the quality of the documents, that's a huge win for sure. Whether it's 435 days or 345 days, I don't think it matters. The agency's committed, I think, to 90 days. So it's at least 90 days, 90 days minimum. So for every chain, every query like that, so I can really pile up. You have three, you're already three or four, three, you have four queries like that, you're already a year behind the target. So value creation, let's talk about that. How do you make money?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in this industry, this work has to get done, right? We're talking about documentations that are required for submission. You're talking about bringing in more regulatory intelligence. This is work that's ultimately already budgeted and it has to get done. If you look at just documentation, it's a $15 billion market. It's growing to 19 billion in the coming years. It's not going away. And so I think the question that ultimately pharma and biotech companies, have to sort of manage is not whether these documents will be created, it's sort of how will they be produced, in sort of the AI era. And that's ultimately kind of the same budget that we've been working with. Customers come to us because of our kind of platform and our approach here, and driving the quality. And what's interesting is it's not really about reducing the cost of this work. It's not saying, hey, is it going to be cheaper for me to write this document using AI? It's not really the conversation we're having with leaders here. It's about, can I accelerate this work with
Right,
quality in mind, right?
right.
And every day saved does matter. It's a day closer to getting therapies to patients. So can I drive again the speed and the quality? Not so much can I reduce the cost of this
Right. And the
work.
beautiful thing about this is that the budget is already on the table. So it's not like some startups where they have to say, I'm doing something incredibly interested in, I don't know, and let's say, I don't know, say in cars, maybe some new way to some robot to wash your car or something like that. And there is no, right now the car washes are doing just fine as it is, and there's no budget. They don't have budget to buy $100,000 robot, so it's like you have to sometimes with innovation in the tech world, you need to find new budget to get the innovation in there. Now, in a case like there, you're talking about eating from an existing budget, right? And basically you have a value prop for an existing budget.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The budget is there. I'll say the interesting note, and I think we're seeing this more and more with AI startups, is the budget is often tagged for services work, right? You're used to hiring support based on kind of the spikes of documentation, and now you're talking about using that for AI generated output, and that's a very different, model when you think about how technology has been purchased in the past. And so I think that's a really interesting. Path that or dynamic the industry is kind of working towards. But go back to the work has to get done, and the question is, how are you going to get it done?
So let's zero in on your on value capture. So what's your business model? How do you charge customers? Do you charge them per what? Per document? Per what?
Yeah, we try to match kind of the service model in their mind. What is the value we're providing? The value is the output of specific documents, specific volumes. So we really try tie our pricing back to that. And for certain, volume and larger customers, we have an enterprise licensing program. And
So
that's been
basically,
a really nice way to just align around what do they have to get done, fits that
so
mental model.
so what you're saying is that if say I'm a drug sponsor and I have, for the sake of argument, it's not 100, it's a lot more. But say I have 100 documents, then I pay for 100 documents, and if I need 150, then I'll pay for 150.
That's right. And I think what's great about that is, again, very aligned to what you need to, what you're ultimately trying to accelerate. We don't limit number of users. We believe this is really collaborative and we don't want to charge you for the next editor or reviewer or QCer. We actually think this is a great way to bring experts together and we don't want to limit that. So it's really trying to, again, align around what's the value that we provide.
Tell me something. This is mostly drugs, or are you working with device companies as well?
Yeah, we've focused primarily on the drug side. I think there's plenty of need there, and given our own background, and I think our approach, as a early stage company, is pick your lane and do it really, really well, and we're seeing that with our customers today.
Makes total sense. So a simple business model, you pay per document set. Tell us three things. You just had a press release on the query prediction, and you have some new product tiers. But what are three things you want to do for your customers in the next 9 months?
Yeah, I think when I think about the next 9 months, before I even jump into those three things, there's so much changing around us. And I'm glad you brought up kind of the FDA and ELSA. Like, I'm really excited as I look ahead to the next 9 months or a year about even just the regulator stance around using AI, using it safely, and thinking about the right, human control and traceability. So I just expect as we look ahead, just continued real tailwinds in the space. I think our views do more of the same, right? First, deliver more time savings and quality improvements. I think what's exciting with our programs that we or companies where we've been in longer programs is that we're seeing compounding value. It's not just the time saved on the first document, but increased time and quality in the second and the third and the fourth. And so being able to demonstrate what these larger programs look like in terms of speed and quality from the preclinical through CMC and clinical. Um, Second is really expand kind of the proactive intelligence side. And we started with this area of, query prediction, but how can we drive this further in terms of cross-program risks and optimizing submission strategy? So much of this even comes down to like resourcing of teams that we're seeing and some of those bottlenecks as well. And so we think there's an opportunity as we get deeper in the workflow with companies to just get more proactive. And then third, I know we haven't gotten a chance to talk about this so deeply, but deepening our peer-to-peer support model. So when we started the company, obviously we hired a whole team of AI engineers from Google and Facebook and Microsoft and whatnot. We also hired an entire team of regulatory experts, medical writers, technical writers, and they're the ones who not just shaped the product and the interface, but also the output of from our agents, but they also support our entire deployment model. So they lead training, they lead customer success, and we really think about it as a peer-to-peer deployment model. It's been amazing to see how much that resonates during this moment of transformation. And my goal in the next 12 months is to go even deeper on how we support change management and how we support teams as their own roles evolve. So our goal is more of the same, helping our customers accelerate submissions and getting treatments to patients faster.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Um, just as we were talking, I didn't really think too deeply about this when I was preparing for the call, but so your customers, I kind of assume that your customers are sponsors. Is that correct?
Mhm. That's correct.
Yeah. So you don't actually work with CROs.
Oh, pharma, biotech, and CROs. That's right. Yeah. So think of it as anywhere that documentation and writing is ultimately happening.
Okay. So if I were a CRO and I was working for, say, I don't know, some biotech, you would happily sign a contract with me.
Yeah, again, our goal is wherever this work is happening, we want to support it being done, and we've seen the real value of applying our platform for
So
that.
let's say I'm a specialty CRO. I don't know what let me make one up. Say I'm a specialty CRO in Philadelphia that specializes in neurodegenerative diseases, and I have 10 medical writers on my staff, and I want to fire them all and hire you. Could I do that?
Well, you can certainly hire us, certainly work with us to drive, productivity. Um, Ultimately, our goal is to make every expert, more productive and drive
No, no,
more
don't be
expert
politically
judgment.
correct. Don't be politically. See, I'm a CEO of a professional services company. Okay, I'm thinking in terms I have to pay these people salary, right? And or if they're contractors, I have to pay their hourly rate. So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I'm thinking in my mind how much money I could save by putting my fixed cost to zero and contracting with Anita and saying, hey, Anita, let's do a deal where I'll buy like what is it? It's like Microsoft used to have a licensing deal like that. You could like buy like a stock of licenses, okay? And you could have like floating licenses, okay? I think at Intel we did that. So we had like, I don't know, 25,000 licenses. So I'll buy a stock of of documents from you, okay? It's like a prepaid Metro card. And I have a Metro card of 25,000 documents, and then basically every time you do a document for me, you'll just it's like like the coffee cards at the local cafe, right? So you put a little hole, and then I have one document down. I have another you know 24,999 documents to go on the card. So could you do a deal like that with me?
We have done a lot of different deals, but I'll say the one note I'll have is I fundamentally do not believe we're in a place where AI will replace medical writers, right? And I think it's really important for organizations to step back,
But you have your
learn
own medical
from the
writers,
experts.
right? I could contract with you to do my medical writing.
That is possible. Yeah, we have services, but I'll say we are a technology company. Ultimately, what we've developed is our technology platform, and what our medical writers do is support the uptake of that, if that makes
Ah,
sense.
okay. So the writers are helping you develop the
Yes,
systems, not deliver the service.
that's right. And I think going back to this, I think what you're sort of getting at is like, what does this mean for organizations in terms of their own staffing? And I just go back to, I really believe AI, at least where we are today, is more of a function of elevating experts and freeing them from some of this repetitive work. And I think what we're seeing is how much it can improve productivity. I've yet to meet a team that is not overburdened with the amount of work that has to be done.
I don't know. There's this legal software called Harvey. You know about
Uh-huh.
Harvey? You know,
Yeah, I
you
do.
you you might have seen the series on Netflix, right? The founder named the company after the lawyer on Netflix. I don't know if you know that.
Yep.
Fun fact,
Yep.
right? So let's say I'm pretty sure because one of my nephews went to work for one of these mid-sized law firms in New York. But it's mid-sized. They only have like 500 lawyers. Okay, that makes them a mid-sized firm, right? So he went to work for this mid-sized firm in New York, and he was doing document review. Now, document review is something which I think Harvey can automate. Now, you guys are sort of like doing a lot more than document review already. You can
Yeah.
actually generate the document based on the protocol and maybe some additional prompting from maybe the clinical I don't know, the VP clinical or something like that. But it seems to me that all of these guys, at the start of their career, doing document review, they're replaced by Harvey. In your case, I bet you guys could replace all these. I'm getting back into my role as CEO of a specialty CRO in Philadelphia. Okay, I want to fire all my junior people and use you. I can't do that.
I would strongly advise against it. I mean, look, I think we're in early innings of AI, and it's really important for every organization to work through a transformation of what does that look like for their organization? What is the role of their experts? What does it look like to go from doing some of this repetitive work now to be more strategic and reviewing? Again, our mission is how do we get drugs to patients faster? And I think we really believe AI can do that. What that looks like for an organization, I think is a continued discussion.
So I'm still wearing my CEO hat. Okay, I'm not going to let you off so easy. So basically what you just told me is that I'm not going to be able to fire anybody. I'll have to pay you and pay the salaries of my medical
Yeah.
writer.
And the conversations we've had and the deals that we've done with CROs has really been about how do we improve top line, right? You have now a team that it can do so much more and do it with higher quality. What does
Uh-huh.
this look like for your business expansion? And you're doing it in a more productive, more efficient way, and turning around these deliverables to your customers even faster with higher quality.
Okay,
That is a
now
huge unlock in terms of value. And I think and that's why I go back to like, I really think it's very organizational specific around kind of growth goals and managing the business.
so now you're talking. So basically you're telling me as a CRO, I can take on more business,
Yeah.
improve my quality. I don't have to fire anybody. I'll be able to get everybody doing more work. and maybe having more fun, hopefully. I don't know. And
I think so. At least that's what our medical writers say. They're having more fun.
well, so you see, that should be part of your value proposition. Be more effective, and produce you
More
know
fun.
five times more documents and half the time and have 10 times the fun or something like
I
that.
like it. I like it. I'm gonna add it into our stuff now.
Okay. So I'll tell Marla to work with me to write copy for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Um, that brings us to the last question, which is a surprise question, and it's a surprise question which I've been asking for the past 7 or 8 episodes, which is, slow drum roll. What is, Anita Modi, the biggest anti-pattern in your industry?
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest anti-pattern might be I'll say misconception, but I'll say belief that organizations, pharma, biotech, CROs can build this themselves. This idea of, hey, we're going to build this internally. We think we can do it. Models are great. Um, we especially saw that when we started the company, I'll say, 2.5 years ago. What's been really interesting and is especially over the last year and a half, we've seen companies who've attempted that come back. We call it the build boomerang. And the reason is simple. It's hard. Like getting this right is not a side project. It's a full-time product discipline. You need very, uh, smart, capable engineers who understand where and how to apply AI, how to think about different models at different points, orchestrate, agents in very specific ways. And you also need experts in the loop, right? And I think the cost of getting it wrong is also high, right? You're not talking about just like a botched, pilot or project. It's it's a delayed, submission, it's an error in data, it's hallucination, it's, you know, ultimately missing out on kind of months of patient access. And I think that's kind of the math that's missed when companies ultimately think about, can we just spin this up? I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to get right at scale. And what I mean by scale is doing it across not just one, type of document, but doing it across different teams, do it across different use cases, and doing it in a way that meets regulatory guidelines around, traceability and human in the loop, and ultimately the stakes that are required in our industry.
I get that. I hear that from a lot of my guests. And,
Yeah.
we have other guests that are doing things in the on this continuum of from discovering and targeting molecules all the way to agents that work with CRAs to monitor the data and GCP compliance.
Yeah.
So I see the same story. I hear the same story from everyone, which is that, yeah, sure, you think you can do it yourself. But in fact, everyone I talk to has a similar model to you, which is basically they have content matter experts working with engineers who are smart at developing the AI side, where in the contact matter experts, they know the workflows. And by the way, the
Yeah.
workflows are not documented on the internet. So the workflows are actually up
Tribal
here,
knowledge. Yeah,
right? Tribal knowledge. I love that expression. That's true. And so
it's
the
true.
medical writers you have on staff, they know how to do it, but it's not, it's not something you can Google and get the right answer. And
No, and I'll say it's a specific mindset. We joke that if our engineers ever wanted, a change in career, they could probably be junior, medical technical writers. And all of our writers are very proficient with AI. I mean, actually, everyone at our company goes through an AI proficiency, test as part of our interview process. So it's how do you establish kind of shared language and how do you think about the best solution sort of in this future by bringing together both of those sort of expert domains.
well,
Um,
it sounds
yeah.
great. It sounds like a good, a good company to invest in. And certainly you're in a space where when you're a place when the end user says, "Oh, my nephew and my dog could do that," okay, then you're in a good place, okay. Especially when they come back a year later and they say, I guess what, my nephew and my dog didn't do such a good job on the project.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Um, Well, so I've had the pleasure to host Anita Modi, who's the founder and CEO of Pure AI. And they're doing something which is, in a way, you kind of look at it and you say, well, this is kind of low tech, but it is actually the last mile of an FDA submission for a new drug. And the last mile is always the most important mile. Anyone who's ever run a marathon or a half marathon knows that for sure. And and my name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. I want to thank Marla Kurtzman for bringing a tremendous guest to the show today. And wish you, Anita, and the team a huge amount of success cracking a really a nasty problem and the kind of problem which is really maybe not so glamorous, but it's really important one. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Danny, thank you for having me. Great questions. And yeah, really appreciate it.